On my 20th birthday, my parents sold my entire collection of priceless tools to pay for my brother's tuition. When I told my father he'd destroyed my future, he said, "You live under my roof." So, I left that night without looking back. This morning, my father marched into the backyard to find the workshop I built entirely stripped bare. And now he's realizing he just made the biggest mistake of his life. This is where the story truly begins. And you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The day had started with a dull loss. Throbbing headache. A familiar companion after a 60-hour work week. It was my 20th birthday. But we'd postponed any celebration. My older brother, Miles, had an important exam, and my father, Arthur, insisted we shouldn't distract him. I didn't mind. All I wanted was a quiet evening and a few hours of peace in my workshop. I pushed open its door, expecting the familiar sweet scent of rosewood and spruce. Instead, I was met with silence. The room was empty. My breath hitched. "No?" I whispered. My German-made workbench gone. My humidity cabinet gone. My pegboard wall stripped bare. And the tools? May God. The tools. My hand-rubbed Japanese chisels. My specialized router jigs. My grandfather's irreplaceable 1950s spokeshaves. All of it gone. I ran back into the house. My parents, Arthur and Brenda, and my brother, Miles, were at the dinner table. "Where are my tools?" The laughter stopped. My father looked up, unbothered. Amy. Good. We were wondering when you'd notice." Notice my voice was trembling. "The shed is empty. Where is everything?" "We sold it," Arthur said, his voice flat. "We got a fantastic price. It all went to a collector this afternoon." "You sold my future," I whispered, the reality crushing my chest. Those weren't just tools. That was my career. Arthur's face hardened. "Your hobby wasn't paying the bills, Amy. Miles's career will. You are a part of this family and you will contribute. I have every right." He boomed. When I screamed at him, "You live under my roof. You eat my food. Everything you think you own is under my authority." The words hung in the air. Cold and final? Asterisk. You live under my roof. Asterisk. It wasn't a statement. It was a cage. In that single, terrible moment, something inside me didn't just break, it hardened. Grief is a luxury. Rage is a fuel. But this was the cold, clean math of a problem stated clearly. He hadn't just sold my tools. He had given me an invoice for my freedom. "Okay," I said, my voice suddenly calm. Arthur blinked. "Okay. Good. Now sit down and eat." I just stared at him. He thought he had taken everything. He thought he had won. "No. Thank you," I said. "I'm not hungry." I turned, walked to my room, and locked the door. I pulled a duffel bag from under my bed and began to pack. As I zipped it, a cold smile touched my lips. He was an amateur. He'd gone into my workshop, taken the obvious things, and hadn't looked any deeper. He'd left the most valuable things behind. They had forgotten about the massive stacks of rare tonewood I kept hidden under the floorboards. They didn't know the difference between a plank of pine and a 50-year-old plank of Brazilian rosewood worth more than all the tools combined. And they had forgotten about the one man who had taught me my true worth. They had forgotten about Patrick. I picked up my phone and dialed his number. "Patrick," I said, my voice steady. "I need your help. And I need your truck. My father just sold my tools." There was a pause. Then a low, dangerous voice. What? "I'm on my way." The rage didn't hit me until we were on the highway. It came in a sudden, blinding wave. So intense, it made me shake. But under it, something new was forming. Resolve. Patrick gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. He was a man in his late 60s with kind eyes and hands like scarred leather. He was a master, and he'd become the father. Arthur never was. He is a fool. Amy, Patrick said, a destructive, ignorant fool. But he's also sloppy. What did he miss? Everything. I said, a grim smile on my lips. He missed everything that matters. An hour later, we were parked 2 streets away from my house in a 16-foot box truck Patrick had rented. Just then, 2 more cars pulled up. It was 3 guys from the local woodworkers guild. A friends of mine and Patrick's. They were big, capable, and after hearing a 30-second version of the story, quietly furious, we work in silence. I said, handing them all gloves. We go through the back gate, straight to the shed. We take everything. For the next 3 hours, we operated like a ghost crew. We moved like shadows. The only sounds, the soft squeak of the dolly's wheels and muffled grunts of exertion. First, my 2 remaining industrial workbenches, which Arthur had missed because they were in the dirty section of the shed. Then my drill press and bandsaw, hidden under a tarp. And then, the grand prize. I knelt and used a pry bar to lift 3 planks of the flooring. Beneath it was a shallow, lead-lined crawl space, perfectly humidity-controlled. Inside was my treasure, my collection of tonewood. To a layman like my father, it was a stack of lumber. To a luthier, it was a bank vault. 30 sets of master-grade Sitka spruce, multiple billets of flamed maple, a dozen sets of Indian rosewood, and, in a special case, 3 sets of pre-banned Brazilian rosewood. That wood alone was worth more than Miles's tuition. Each piece was passed from hand to hand with the reverence of a holy relic. This wasn't theft. It was a rescue mission. By 4 a.m. The shed was a hollow shell. It was exactly as it had been when my parents moved in an empty, useless box. We drove to Patrick's shop, a large barn of a building 30 miles away, and unloaded everything. As the sun began to tint the sky pink, the guys from the guild, true heroes, just nodded, accepted my whispered, tearful, thanks, and drove off. Patrick put a heavy hand on my shoulder. You're safe here. Amy, there's an apartment above the shop. It's yours, as long as you need it. Thank you. Patrick, I whispered. Now, he said, handing me a hot cup of coffee. Let's find your tools. My father, Arthur, always said he respected hard work. But what he meant was a paycheck. My passion for lutherie was, in his eyes, a whimsical waste of time. You get splinters. He'd say, I get quarterly bonuses. See the difference. My brother Miles was Arthur's prize-winning racehorse. The family fund was established the day he got his acceptance letter to law school. From that moment on, our entire financial gravity shifted to orbit him. My mother took on extra admin work. My father canceled his fishing trips. And I became the family's secondary income stream. My journey into lutherie wasn't a hobby, it was an inheritance. My grandfather, my mother's father, had been a luthier in the old country. When I was 10, he placed his smallest chisel in my hand and said, the wood already knows what it wants to be. Amy, you just have to listen. He passed away 2 years later, leaving me his entire chest of tools. They were priceless. To my father, they were just old junk in a box. He never understood my apprenticeship with Patrick, the most respected luthier in the state. I worked 40 hours a week for Patrick, learning the art, Then I'd go to a diner and work another 20t00 pair, slinging hash to save up. Every dollar went into my future. My family saw none of this. They just saw the shed door close. Last year, when Miles needed a new laptop, Arthur suggested I sell my car. It's just practical. Amy, Arthur had explained, Miles needs this for his career. You can take the bus. The barb was intentional. He knew I used the car to pick up supplies. The 2 extra hours of bus travel a day meant 2 fewer hours in my workshop. I caved. Miles got his laptop. I started taking the bus. This was the pattern. My sacrifices were practical. Miles's entitlements were investments. Now, I understood the full, ugly truth. Selling my tools wasn't a last resort. It was a power play. He had ripped the heart out of my world to pawn it for his son's comfort. He thought he was teaching me a lesson about practicality. But all he'd done was confirm what I'd long suspected. In this house, I wasn't a daughter. I was collateral. The morning exploded. I was in the apartment above Patrick's shop, which was quickly becoming my new home. It was small, but the entire place smelled like aged wood and varnish, a scent that felt safer than any place I'd ever lived. My phone, which I'd left on silent, was lit up like a Christmas tree. 15 missed calls from Mother, 8 from Arthur, a stream of increasingly hysterical texts from Miles. 7:30 a.m. Where are you? Mom's having a panic attack. 7:45 a.m. Seriously. Amy, this isn't funny. Dad just went to the shed. He's calling the police. You'd better get back here and return Dad's stuff. 7:46 a.m. Asterisk, it's theft from your own father. Amy. 8:15 a.m. Asterisk. Mom is in tears. You've really done it this time. You are the most selfish person I have ever met. Dad is driving to your little shop to talk to your boss. Asterisk. The last one made my blood run cold. I ran downstairs. Patrick. My father is on his way here. Patrick was already on the phone. A grim look on his face. He held up a hand, silencing me. The luthier community is a small, tight-knit world. There are only a handful of dealers in the tri-state area who would even know what those tools were. Patrick had started with the biggest John Henderson. I heard Patrick's voice. His tone suddenly iron. He said, "What?" "John." He said his daughter gave up the hobby. Yes. Yes. That's her. No. She's right here. She's my apprentice. He told you they were his to sell. I see. John, that man didn't just sell you his daughter's tools. He sold you stolen goods. Her grandfather's collection was in that lot. They are irreplaceable. Listening to Patrick defend me, my name spoken with respect by 2 of the most important men in my profession, I felt something I hadn't realized I'd been starving for validation. My father saw a hobby. They saw a colleague. In that moment, the family I'd lost was replaced by the one I had chosen. Patrick's voice turned cold. I understand your position. And you understand mine. That man, Arthur, has committed fraud. No, I don't want you to call the police. Not yet. I have a better idea. Tell me, John, when does he come in to sign the final consignment papers? He listened, then looked at me as I mouthed that my father was on his way. John, he's on his way to my shop right now. Perfect. Let him come. He hung up. John Henderson is on his way. 2. He's not happy. It seems your father not only sold him your tools, but he also sold him my Festool sander that you'd borrowed. He committed fraud against a man who buys and sells businesses for a living. Your father is a spectacular idiot. At that moment, a car screeched to a halt in the gravel driveway. Arthur stormed out. his face a mask of purple rage. He marched toward the shop, saw me standing in the doorway, and pointed a finger. "You," he roared. "You think you can steal from me? I am pressing charges." "Amy, you emptied my shed. That is theft of my property." Patrick stepped out from behind me, wiping his hands on a rag. He was a good foot taller than my father, and built like the oak trees he worked with. "Arthur, I presume," Patrick said, his voice a calm, deep rumble. My father faltered. "Who are you?" "I'm Patrick," he said, "Amy's mentor. And you are on my property," yelling at my apprentice. "You need to lower your voice. She stole my lumber." "My workbenches," Arthur sputtered. "I am here to get them back." "Your lumber?" I asked, stepping forward, my voice ice. "You mean the 50-year-old Brazilian rosewood sets or the master-grade Sitka spruce? Tell me." "Dad, what exactly did you plan to do with them?" "Build a birdhouse." Arthur's face went blank. "It's wood. It was in my shed. It was in my Times workshop." I corrected him. "The one I built with my own money. You don't get to sell my future and keep my inventory." "I have every right." He was losing control, his narrative collapsing. "You live under my roof. That roof stopped being my home the moment you betrayed what was under it," I said, my voice ringing with clarity. "And this," I gestured to the gravel drive, "is not your roof. This is Patrick's property. You are a trespasser here." "Is that the law?" A new voice cut through the tension. A black Mercedes had pulled silently into the driveway. A man in a sharply tailored suit stepped out. This was John Henderson. He looked calm, collected, and absolutely lethal. "Mr. Arthur?" Henderson asked, though it wasn't a question. "Yes," my father said, puffing up his chest, sensing a potential ally. "This girl, my daughter, she stole Mr. Prassen." "Arthur," Henderson interrupted, his voice like silk-wrapped steel. "My name is John Henderson. You visited my showroom yesterday. You sold me a collection of luthier tools." A flicker of panic crossed Arthur's face. "You said your daughter gave up the hobby." "She did." That's interesting," Henderson said, taking a step closer, "because Amy here is one of the most promising apprentices in the state, and her boss, Patrick, is my oldest friend. What's also interesting is that the collection you sold me contained several heirloom tools that belonged to Amy's grandfather, which she can prove. And it also contained a $1,200 sander that belongs to Patrick, which he can also prove." Henderson glanced at his watch. "You lied to me." "Mr. Arthur," he said, his voice dangerously pleasant. "You came into my place of business and you sold me stolen goods. That is fraud. That is a felony.